Hi, my name's Andrew Jowett. I'm a sport and exercise medicine physician. I'm also clinic director of Olympic Park Sports Medicine Centre, and I'm a medical director of Melbourne Victory.
That's a crunching tackle from Manny Muscat, who's poleaxed Aaron Moy.
He's out of it too.
And no hesitation from Jared Gillette, straight into that top pocket. The yellow card, Moy has stayed down. Has been knocked cold, Aaron Moy. Some remorse shown there by Muscat. And it looks as though the forearm caught Moy, and then he's banged his head heavily on the surface.
I think he's been knocked out before he's hit the ground, and then it's been...
Yeah, concussion is a really hot topic. We saw Pereira in the World Cup be concussed and force his way back onto the pitch against the doctor's orders. And so that's something that FIFA will really have to address. Over the last 5 years, I guess, there have been a number of significant worldwide concussion conferences from all sorts of sports. Obviously, the football codes, it's a big deal in the NFL in America, ice hockey, rugby, and football. We're all talking about concussion. We're all trying to improve our understanding of concussion and our management of concussion. We don't want people to have head injuries, brain trauma, long-term brain problems out of playing football. And so we need to manage concussion as best we can. We also need to prevent it as much as we can. We need to, and that's an important side of things. Particularly football's been fairly proactive in that. Most concussion in football doesn't relate to heading or heading the ball. It relates to contact with another player's head when you're competing for a header, a high elbow. For goalkeepers who don't rarely head the ball, it's hitting a goalpost or an opponent, challenging them. So the causes of concussion that happen in the game, we want to try and minimise those and look at, certainly with headers, referees are told to discourage players leading with their elbows, the use of the elbow to get height. In fact, it's technically meant to be a red card for that sort of offence. And that's really to avoid the nasty head injuries and concussion that can happen in the game. So we should be trying to prevent it. But also, we need to, once it happens, we need to make sure they're managed effectively. We can't afford to have players going back on the pitch or going back to play unless they're fully recovered. Because we feel that if you haven't fully recovered, one, you're at more risk of another episode of concussion because your awareness isn't great, you can't protect yourself. And two, there might be further damage that happens to your brain if it still hasn't fully recovered.
Derby got something on that. John Terry, as usual, dives bravely in.
Well, he did, but Derby's booked right on his head, and I think this is a bad one. He really caught the Chelsea captain big time here.
He's completely out.
You watch it as it hops up, watch John Terry come in, and Derby goes up and smashes right.
So following on from the discussion about concussion and recognition and reacting to remove them from the field of play, well, the next question is, what do we do now? What should we do? Obviously, it depends on the circumstances. If there's a severe injury and they may be knocked out, then obviously you've got to apply first aid strategies, and that's airways, breathing, circulation. Remember about the potential for a neck injury, and so they need to be handled by someone experienced and safely removed for the play, because if they're unconscious, we can't assess whether they've got any neck pain or a potential neck injury in the first place anyway. So that may even require an ambulance onto the field to remove the player. If a player's knocked unconscious, then I think it's appropriate that they're urgently assessed by a doctor, whether that's a hospital or a general practice 24-hour clinic. It's important that anyone who's knocked out is assessed by a doctor. I think it's probably important that anyone who's suspected concussion is assessed by a doctor, and the rules we have say that players don't return to play unless they've got medical clearance, and so that doesn't necessarily, if someone's dazed and got a bit of a headache and they lose a bit of balance but they feel mostly okay, a bit tired, and you assume they've been concussed, then it may be appropriate that they see their GP during the week and get assessed at that stage. What we normally do for someone like that is we give them a period of rest until their symptoms settle. So symptoms, things like headaches, blurred vision, not feeling quite right, bit foggy, lacking memory, all those sort of symptoms, we'd wait for them to settle. And so you'd be pretty rested. And for kids, it actually means they're probably going to miss a bit of school as well, because they need to rest their brain from school type activities. For kids, we talk about return to learn as well as return to play. So we need to allow the brain to recover. There's a bit of a myth you shouldn't treat headaches in these kids. You can treat headaches with the usual headache medication, obviously under the supervision of a doctor. That myth probably arises more from more severe head injuries where we're thinking about the potential for a bleed. But the thing about concussion is it's not a structural injury, it's a functional injury. It doesn't damage tissue per se that we can see, or not at a large scale level, but it interferes with the function and the communication between the nerves. So you've rested a player and their symptoms have settled down, so what's the next stage? Well, the next stage is some light exercise. Go for a walk, get on a bike, maybe a light jog. Let them do a little bit of light exercise. Test them. If they have any symptoms again, if any of their symptoms of concussion come back, they're not ready. So you stay on that stage. It's important that there's 24 hours before you step someone up a stage. So you might rest for a day, give it 24 hours, then they might go for a run, give it 24 hours. Then you start to introduce a bit of sport-specific training. So in football, the ball comes out. We get them to do some dribbling, just moving the ball around, not with the team, on their own. Do some kicking and passing. Just make sure again, do they have any symptoms? Check that box. Another 24 hours, they join in non-contact type training. No physical contact with other players, no risky strategies. So they can get out and do their usual, do that sort of non-contact training with the alongside and with the team. And then give them another 24 hours, they get back to full training. At each stage, we're assessing their symptoms and making sure that they don't have a recurrence. If they check all those boxes, they get to the stage, they do full training with the team, full contact training, then they get medical clearance, they return to play. And it's important that there's medical clearance at that stage.